Villains aren't born, they are created. And once you understand how this works, it is so much fun to really bring villains to life and to create your own villains for whatever project you're working on. I'm writing a dark fantasy novel, and I wanted to research how to make a really powerful villain and what really makes a villain. And I wanted my readers to kind of love the villain in my novel, but at the same time struggle with why they love them, to connect to them, but hate them a little bit, but love them at the same time. A complicated villain. So this is everything I learned about villains and creating your own villain. I wanted a villain that was feared, but also fascinating. Why do we love villains? What makes us love them? Why do we fear them? And why are we so interested in villains? Like, Disney has a whole thing about villains, and they're some of people's favorite characters. Why are villains so captivating? Villains typically break the rules that everyone else is expected to follow. They do something that is forbidden. It usually has to do with power or with ego, rebellion, and freedom. Those are 4 themes that villains work with. A villain really represents a choice that the average person or the reader or the viewer could make, but they usually decide not to because there are maybe consequences. It doesn't match with our morals or our values. So the villain makes a choice that the typical person wouldn't, and this creates tension. A villain is really a mirror to society, to our society. At their core, a villain will reflect some anxieties and some flaws of our current society. And as the writer, the creator, you get to choose what you want that to be. What fears do you want to reflect? What flaws do you want your villain to embody? These fears and these flaws should be something that is easily recognizable or easily agreed upon to be a fear or a flaw by the majority of readers, by the majority of society. Villains often will exaggerate this fear or this flaw, and the consequences of the choice that they have made is often exaggerated as well. Corruption, greed, vengeance, control, those are all consequences that are likely to happen from the result of your villain's choice. So when picking your villain and all their fears, their flaws, the choices that they are going to make, the consequences that come from that, we're really looking at ourselves and the communities we interact in, our country, the world as a whole, and taking something that we see as a flaw or a common fear and putting it into a person, which is our villain. Our villain is an embodiment of an issue in the world or a fear in the world, a collective fear. Once we know what our villain is embodying, we need a backstory. We need a backstory that is more personal to our villain. The origin story gives our villain a why. We don't always need to let the reader know the backstory. As long as we know it, it will show through in our writing. Usually villains would have been betrayed or abused. There's trauma. They're usually shaped by circumstances that have happened to them, although sometimes they are just born that way, but usually there's some traumatic event or something beyond their control that happened to them. This background, this origin story, doesn't justify their actions, but it makes them human. It makes them relatable. It's what makes us connect to them. It makes them unforgettable. We can begin to have some sympathy with them. And this is when tension is created, which is great for a villain. We want tension surrounding our villain. I really wanted to look at the roots of evil because villains are typically known as evil or thought of to be evil. So motivations for evil are often power or revenge. A good villain doesn't just want to destroy something just for the sake of destroying it. They either want to gain power or they want revenge. And underneath that power or revenge, there is fear. Maybe that is a longing or a desperate need to belong. What insecurity is the villain trying to cover up with their need to gain power or to gain control, or their desire for revenge? Are they covering up that they don't want anyone to see? Their softer side, the side that was protecting them from the trauma, an insecurity, something that they wouldn't admit to someone else. They might not even admit it to themselves. Something that had made them feel small, insecure, and they will do anything to not feel that way again. So your villain needs some sort of trauma. Villains usually come from a harsh environment. an oppressive system, or some toxic relationship or toxic expectation. And then to make your villain even more complex, you want your villain to also have something that we can relate to, that we like in them. Maybe your villain is really charming, or they have good intentions. They want to help someone or do something, but they're doing it in the wrong way. They're going about it in a way because of their trauma, a way that is actually more harmful or destructive, but their trauma is blinding them from realizing. So they have good intentions, or some good intentions. Maybe not all their intentions are good, but they have some. But they're doing something unspeakable, something that goes against our values and our morals to accomplish that good intention. This creates an inner conflict and moral ambiguity. Compelling villains really believe that they are the hero. All their decisions come from twisted logic and deep personal beliefs that is a result of their trauma. This creates tension and emotional depth. When you realize that your villain was once an innocent child, someone who just wanted love and safety, remembering a human form beneath the monster that you are writing about or creating helps your villain be powerful. Again, you don't always need to spell out the backstory and the trauma. Often we don't know the trauma of villains, but the writer, the creator, does, and it shows through the villain's actions, through the villain's thought process, through the consequences that arise because of the villain's actions, the villain's choices and decisions that they make. Your villain needs desires and fears, contradictions, and kind of a personal code or belief system, values that they follow. One question that I'm going to ask when I create my villain in my novel is, what does she want? Why does she want it? And what is she willing to sacrifice to get it? Keeping those 3 questions in mind will keep me on track while writing and really creating a compelling and complex villain. If your villain has formative wounds like the trauma and pivotal turning points, incorporating them in the villain's story as the story unfolds is how you can kind of share their backstory in little snippets throughout the story. In every action or decision they make, give a little bit insight into their story without sharing it all. And lastly, something really important is to make sure that the villain doesn't just go against the hero or the main character, but helps shape the transformation of the main character. The villain has to challenge them mentally, emotionally. The villain has to expose their weaknesses and really push them to evolve. A really good villain is unsettling. A really good villain causes you to feel empathy for them and encourages the reader, the viewer, to also confront maybe an uncomfortable truth or a fear. Best villains haunt us and remind us how delicate the line between good and evil is. Makes you wonder what you would do if you were in the villain situation. How would you react? So talking about this has just made me excited to go do some writing and really develop my villain's backstory even more. I hope it also inspired you and you are able to create really compelling villains and give you some idea into what I am considering and what I am thinking when I am writing my novel and how I'm creating the villain of my novel. There might be a few characters that you could see being a villain. Everyone kind of thinks they're doing the right thing, and they all have to make pretty uncomfortable choices. If you have any more advice about creating villains and keeping them really rich and complex, let me know in the comments below. But for now, please like and subscribe for similar videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.